All right. Thank you all for attending this week. We're going to get right into it. Thank you for once again coming in with your questions and your thoughts and your shares. So every week we like to get right into the knowledge of the revocable living trust. We also get into the knowledge of the sole proprietor that is specifically used with the Social Security card, the Social Security number. We don't like to get into the sole proprietor that goes with the EIN that comes from the IRS, because we're going to show you how you're supposed to remain this unincorporated connection with the what we call the city, the state, and the government on a day-to-day basis. So we're supposed to remain unincorporated the entire time that you are able to utilize these documents or any of these processes, if one calls it a process or it's strategies. We like to say strategy because if you say processes, then this will cause you to possibly not be able to complete the process. So we don't call it a process. We like to say this is a strategy, and how everybody here is able to go through the strategy to understand how to do this with whatever documents or whatever things that you have. So we're not here to give you a quick fix document or a say, hey, I'll do this for you. I'll go to court for you. Or I'll show you how this works, right? With my documents, and I'm going to give it to you and you copy my answers. This isn't an answer thing. This is more of a strategy. So we want to get right into some of these questions that we already starting off for this day. But I just want to give everybody the main premise to what we do and a foundation to what we talk about on a week-to-week basis. Just want to make sure everybody's here. We do want to talk about some of these courses today and why we say that these courses are required. And we're not going to say that you can get around the courses or you can wait and listen to everything and then find out later. We're going to say that we're going to go into details why the courses are required in order for you to almost do everything that we're going to be talking about. So let's get right into some of the questions, and we'll get into some of these documents and concepts in just a few. And if you all have any testimonials, anybody that's on YouTube or anyone that's in our Zoom meeting chat, we're actually going to start shutting down the Zoom meeting chat only for grantor members who actually pay through their member, what we say your member plan on a week-to-week basis. So we want to make sure everybody has their member plan so we can start explaining and showing how your trust and your documents become more valuable the more we start to utilize the trust and become beneficiaries of other trusts that are already operating. So that is required if you're with universitytechnicians.com to make sure that you're a beneficiary, that we can claim that you are. You have to make sure that you always have an active plan, and it is shown in disclosure and notice on the website. So let's go to our first question. It says, question about birth affidavit. Both of my parents are deceased. I could have a eldest sister as my affiant, but I wasn't sure if I was what the affiant was saying. So my testimony, my husband opened the sole proprietor savings and secured credit accounts. We were also able to open the Treasury Direct account up online as well. They did, however, direct us to both use the form 5512 to verify the direct deposit account with our bank. We will be back at the bank coming Monday. Everything is going great. That's wonderful. So we're getting testimonial of great things happening, going through all these different steps that you have to go through these courses, making sure that the courses are followed so that you can go back and follow up on a lot of these things. So everything that she just mentioned is mostly going to be dealing with the revocable trust course. So this is your strategy course for the revocable living trust. We do have part of it going into the banking course. So that'll get into your private banking course as well. So some of these testimonials may be not familiar to some of us because we're still working on it, or some of us may still say that we've done some of these steps, but we're not actually utilizing the steps in the correct format. So we're going to get into why we have to make sure that we understand where you're going once you start where we say with your documents or your trust. All right, so give me a moment. I'm going to add the notes over here so I can see the notes from my side over to the all right, one moment. All right, Barry, as I get this together, I want to go into some of the announcements too. So we're going to ask anybody else if you have any other testimonials or if you have any questions or thoughts, feel free to type that into the chat, as well as give us more feedback to what it is that you want to accomplish. Because a lot of these things cannot be accomplished unless you actually work on them. And we're able to give feedback to what it is that we need to work on or what we're having trouble with. It could be money. It could be we're having trouble with money. That's one of our things that we like to talk about as well. We're going to talk about money. We're going to talk about how to get out of paying money. We're going to talk about how you get out of paying certain monies to some of these corporations, to some of these entities. So I'll be getting into this document information as well as strategy, because we got to realize that you can have the jersey on. So we're going to go right down to the nitty gritty. Let's say you can have the jersey on, right? You can be on the field, right? All day. Everybody can be on the field with a jersey on. So that's your documents. You know, everybody has a jersey, right? But now you got to perform. You know, it's your turn to perform and get points. They're going to say, right? So how do you get points? Well, points deal with what we're going to call today trust. Trust is your points. So how are you gaining trust on the week-to-week basis? I'll be showing you how you're able to do this, because if you're not gaining trust, I'm not talking about on a mental level with someone. We're saying, well, I gained some trust through the mental. We're going to say that this trust is also physical. We're going to also show that the trust is also physical. All right. So it's not just always about the spiritual and the mental. It's always about also the physical as well. So you got the mental, the spiritual, and the physical, if one was to go into the spirit. But we're not going to spiritual studies today. We're going to go right into the physical, which is most of the time is going to deal with the mental as well. So I'm going to give you all some of the notes, and I want to make sure I'm not missing anybody that's on YouTube. So I always check back and forth every now and then to make sure we're not missing any questions for the people that are live on YouTube. All right, so here we go. So let's go right into the notes for today. And if anybody else wanted to go in and interject with anything, feel free to interject with your comment in our chat, and we'll be able to answer that question as we go. All right, so simple. Always does that. All right, so some of our notes today, we're going to go into some of that and read through some of those things to kind of clarify and give legitimacy as well as credibility to all the things that you're supposed to be doing. So there's no way around any of this knowledge information. This is why I take notes every week. I actually write down my notes. I don't have something that's predetermined or already written up. I actually have to write my notes. I have to write down things on a week-to-week basis, even if I'm typing it up. So you all have to do the same. You should be using your phones, use your notepads, use your whatever it is. Your phone can be utilized as a note-taking device as well. So we're going to get into a lot of this knowledge and information is going to deal with you not using their system. And I know this can be hard. You have to do this without the United States, but this is the only way that you can make sure that you're always in your trust. Now, I know I dealt with this before, but we're going to go into why these courses are very important for you and how by the sole truth and facts by affidavit, this is going to get you to the point where you're understanding your sole truth and facts by affidavit. And we give you this understanding and knowledge of an affidavit because the affidavit is really what makes everything, we like to say, active in the system. Okay, so we like to say that this is active. And we'll even say that every 5 years, we may even have to update the status of the affidavit, even more. So here we go. So this is part of where we're going to say why you need to fax, email, mail, and call all entities. So you have to actually get into the understanding that why you need to do this, why I need to fax, I need to email them, I need to mail them something, and I need to call them. Some of us are always going straight to the call, but I'm going to show you how the call should be almost the last thing, or it should be the first thing. So if it's your first thing, then you're supposed to ask for that information, which is the fax number, the email, and the address, right? So if you're talking to them over the phone, then this most of the time should be dealing with you gaining more information from them so that you can turn in certain information that you're going to be utilizing through your trust. So I wanted to get into this because I want to make sure everybody fully grasps what it means to have an affidavit. So let's get right into the affidavit. And why we say by taking this course that we offer, by starting the courses, we can fully explain the strategies, right? We can't tell you that, hey, you got documents, because people can have documents all day. You can hear me tell you everything there is in and out. You can even get the documents without us and do it on your own, which is fine. We're not saying that this is all about the document game, but we want to make sure that it's right. And we want to make sure there's no mistakes. And we want to make sure that you're able to fully use all this documentation that you would have received or you would have created. Now, I like to say that everything that you do when you have the revocable trust has to be created. So there's nothing that's going to be done for you. That's first things first. So I want to get into my example or my exhibit for today to get us started off with. Right. So this will be the affidavit that I'm going to get us right into today, because this is the newspaper affidavit for Wallace, and how I had to create this assumed name affidavit for my name. And that got me into the system of making sure that my business or my sole proprietor is actually active. Right. So I have to activate myself so that I can help operate all these different businesses. That includes the revocable living trust. That includes the EINs that are created, right? All the EINs, if they're employers, well, guess what? They have to be managed. So even employers have to be managed. So we can't just jump and grab a whole bunch of EINs. So we're going to get into why you have to be right, as well as the EIN being right as the point of reference as well. So we see right now showing you the Pensacola News Journal is where I was in Florida, and I had to do a newspaper that was here in Florida. And I was able to get into some of the knowledge and information that got me to where I am today. Because this was the first things first. I had to assume my name. I didn't know about assuming myself, so I had to understand how this works. I understood the lowercase, and my lowercase, all lowercase name is doing business as the all capital letter name, right? So we get into the all caps. But I also realized that my name is also an office. So I can't just say that I'm just a person walking around. Of course, that doesn't make sense. The person can't walk, it's a person. So the office of my name, right? So this will get you right to the office of my name. So that's why I'm saying that these things have to be under, it's a strategy once you're looking at this from a strategy perspective. You can always request to do business with me through email. So if you want to get to that email is available and it has been published in the legal notice. So legal notice is to all parties seeking to make a claim. That is my name, is doing business as the all capital letter name, which we call the Social Security card name, and all derivatives thereof. So that means any derivative, doesn't matter if it's my last name first, the first name, or the name that's in the back or the front, whatever you want to call it, right? It's still the name that they're trying to communicate with me. Therefore, I don't know who the they is, right? Whoever they are. All right. So I keep it clear because this is an affidavit. Any derivatives, notice of fee schedules, each and every use not authorized, right? So if I didn't authorize you to use the name in a certain way, I am now allowed to charge you this amount of money. Okay. So I put 10,000 because I want to be reasonable. I want to be fair. I want to be just, and I want to be honest, and I got to be reasonable, because I know if I were to put a large sum, this will cause problems for, any and all things. So I do it where I make it a small matter. So it's a small matter first, and then it will turn into a large matter if this continues to happen over and over and over again. So we give you all the example to keep it easy. As we say, it requires $10,000. So it requires some type of payment. So that means this is why you must charge money. We'll get into why your name is valuable and why you're supposed to be thinking about getting paid on a week-to-week basis, rather than out here trying to, we'll say, wait for a check, wait for the money to come. As you can see, within 30 days of notice of this must be settled in full. In order for authorized contact must be made in the name holder for contract to do so. Failure to finally notify the name holder produces an agreement. All right. So that means if you continue to use the name, doesn't matter what it is, then you've made an agreement. So that means your agreement is with the name that you want to utilize, right? So this is important for the affidavit so that you can understand how this looks in the newspaper. It says, failure to timely notify the name holder produces an agreement that the user's contract is invalid. Additionally, this notice is retroactive. All parties prior to this notice must contact the name holder within 180 days, reasonable time, right? 180 days, about 6 months of this notice for an update to the contract. So any contract that was already existing that had your name in there, this is supposed to be updated for you to update and get access to more knowledge of what's going on with your name. So this is every account associated with the name. So that means that my name is associated with every name and every account and any derivative thereof. A written request must be signed on the penalty of perjury and sent to the name holder. So what I would do, if I was looking at this and I want to receive something based upon my situation, look at my legal notice back in 2019, and we're now going into 2026. So I'll be updating this because of the years. I think that I don't think I have to update it, but I would just update it based upon the 5-year limit that I was able to see that each, we say a name or a fictitious name or assumed name is held at. It's always a good practice to update your records because you don't want to stay in the same position that you were in the past. You want to keep moving in the best position that you can. So this goes right into what I said the affidavit is that I was speaking of. I want to get you right into the affidavit and the sole truth and facts by affidavit. And why you need the fax, email, mail, and call all these entities. So it's important that you give them this affidavit that was placed in the newspaper and show them that your name is now being utilized for business now. You don't want to just be out here just, saying things, or you want to be able to get them to agree to the strategy that you're bringing forward. So your strategy has to be very precise and they have to understand what your situation is and they're going to do good business with you. Now, if they don't do good business, this means that you are still letting yourself be subjected to bad business practices. And we're going to explain how this looks. And this is why we go into our 3-course strategy. And the goal is not to use the United States of America or any corporations or any of these entities that are connected advice, right? Because if you use the United States of America's advice for any of these entities that are involved, then you are now moving yourself back into the corporate understanding, which we're going to show you why the corporate understanding is causing us to stay under, which we say that type of understanding or jurisdiction. All right. So you don't want to be under the corporate understanding or the corporate jurisdiction, because this will just take you further and further away from why you even had the trust in place anyway. Because the reason you execute a revocable living trust is so that you also can have power over your name, which is your social security card name, not your social security card itself, but the name that's written on the social security card. All right. So you're going layered now. You're not just going into, hey, they have the card. They own it. It's the government's name. That's not the government's name. If it's your name that you had prior to them creating it, because your mother and your father gave it to you, now you actually have more understanding and more knowledge of why this is taking you out of that understanding of jurisdiction. So I'm gonna get you all to another diagram that I wanted to show that deals with the trust. So we say the trust instrument is the next thing that most people move into. I was trying to find how mine looked on the record, but for some reason now it's unfindable. See if it finds right here. Here we go. So this is an example of the instrument. Right, here we go. It's it right here. You can pull it up on the screen just a moment. I haven't pulled it up yet, so I'll show you all. It's kind of be redundant, but we just want to make sure it doesn't seem redundant if you actually have it. But we just want to make sure that everyone is able to pull these things up in real time whenever you're presented with these facts. You have to make sure that you're presenting the facts as clear as possible, because this is an affidavit. All right. So if you know for sure you have the affidavit, then you're able to utilize, which we say, the revocable trust as your foundation layer. All right. So it's going to all make sense in a few, is that my foundation layer is coming from why I put the trust on the county record. It's because I know that it's private, because I already said I'm a private lender. So why is it redundant that the lawyers or the attorneys are going to say, you don't have to do this. This is a private document. This is true. But they're public entities, right? Don't forget the lawyers and the attorneys, the bar license people, all of them have to get public knowledge, right? Public corporate knowledge. All right. So if you all are still stuck on listening to what someone is telling you about managing your revocable living trust, then we understand why you're falling back into this knowledge over and over again. It's like a spiral effect. You're still going back into the understanding of the attorneys, which we're going to say the lawyers. At that point, they'll turn from attorneys to lawyers. But we're going to get into the details of why you know that you're private. Because if you know you're private, then why are you still dealing with public knowledge? All right, so that's why I go into this, to show the instrument of where it all starts. This is the foundation of what led me to the affidavit. Because if I didn't have this, then I wouldn't be able to also feel comfortable of creating that affidavit that I just showed you just in the past screen. Because the affidavit is designed to be in the newspaper, because it's giving you public notice in the newspaper that this name is now worth value, and it does cost money if you choose to use the name in vain, right? So that means that you're just using the name unauthorized. You can't just use my name as the grantor any way you want anymore, because this is a grantor. All right. So I know some of us are still feeling like, well, it's just not happening for me as fast, because you all are still dealing with them on the individual side, which we understand. You could have been dealing with some things, but as long as you stay in the individual side, this is why these, we'll say this would be a reoccurring situation. So let's get into some of the strategies of why we utilize the strategies to get you out of this, right? So you want to get out of these things that they have you in. So we say that our revocable living trust course is required, as well as the private banking course that we offer is required, and also the power of attorney course is required. Keep in mind, these are strategies. These are not what we say things that you can just find out anywhere in the public, because you're not able to go into the public and gain knowledge from them anymore. Because if you're in the public gaining knowledge, this means that they are now bringing you back into their layers of understanding that causes you to always question if you are even using your trust anymore. So I'm going to give you all something that's called trust law versus United States codes. And I know this is probably new to us. Some of us have never heard of this before, but I'm going to have to show you on the screen, because I don't want you to just take my word and advice for it. I want you all to do your studies, do your research, and I'll also do some of that research as I walk you through, because I want you to know this beyond reasonable doubt of everything that's being displayed or everything that's being said. So before I get into some more details of the university technicians and the courses that we offer, which are strategies, I'll show you what it means to be using the United States codes, right? Or just using, like anything that deals with United States. If you're still saying that you're under the United States, then you're going to perform in these manners. That's why we say trust law versus US codes. So I know it's difficult, but at the same time, if you know that you don't have to operate with the US codes, then this will help you in the first step of understanding. So I read through this as much as I can. And so just bear with me. We do have to get through the readings of this so you all can fully grasp what this means and understand it. So United States trust law primarily governs the creation, administration, and enforcement of trusts, which are legal instruments used for holding and managing wealth. There we go. So that's the first things first. That's why we say you have to collect money. So if you're here and you're like, why do I have this trust? Why do I have this EIN? Why do I have this? Well, I'm going to get into that. I'm going to show you why you're supposed to be collecting money or thinking about how you're going to get some wealth, right? Not just sitting here waiting on the U.S. Treasury, because we know that's part of the government's corporation as well. But we understand that most people are thinking that most of the money is coming from the U.S. Treasury. But there's other corporations out there that has billions and trillions of dollars that you all are just sitting back and you're just going after just the United States Treasury for some reason. So we're going to get into this and show details to why the trust was designed. Once you got paid, this is where the money and the wealth is being held. Well, because you got your legal instrument, you got your trust instrument, you got your revocable trust, you got your affidavit that I just showed you, right? You got the revocable trust instrument right here. All right. And then you got your affidavit. So there's nothing else that you actually need. Let me see if I can go back to the affidavit. May not find it in time, but that's first things first, right? So let's go back to the point. First sentence. Most aspects of trust law in the US are regulated at state level through statutory law, rather than being codified in federal law like the United States Code. Look at that. Boom. Instantly, they told y'all that the trust is not formulated under the United States codes. So you can't use federal law for the trust. I know this will sound crazy. And you wouldn't know this unless you actually did it and you tried, right? So this is a fact. Don't try to go to the federal government asking about trusts. All right. Here we go. It says this is going to promote consistency across states. The Uniform Trust Code, UTC, was developed by the Uniform Law Commission and approved in 2000. Look at that. So they created a brand new law for trusts that I just mentioned to you. They call it trust law. And this is your trust law. It's called Uniform Trust Code. This is not United States Code, okay? So you all are going to learn today that the United States Code does not help your trust. You're going to learn today that the Uniform Trust Codes do, right? The Uniform Trust Codes, UTC. As of 2022, 36 states and jurisdictions have enacted some version of the UTC. Though each state may modify the code to reflect local legal traditions, resulting in ongoing variations in trust law. Look at that. So this is now, the states are now helping develop trust law because the states are now privatizing and helping people who have private trusts to manage their trust privately. Here we go. So the UTC provides a comprehensive framework for trusts, covering topics such as trust creation. Look at that. All right. So you got to create your trust. You can't get to the lawyer. You can't go to the lawyer and you're like, hey, they know everything. I don't know anything, right? So we're going to show you why you need to know something about your trust because you're the creator of your trust. Trustee duties. That's right. Your duties of your trust, which is to gain funds, to gain wealth, right? These are your duties. Revocable and irrevocable trusts. That's right. So we never told you we don't deal with irrevocable. We just said we also have the revocable for those who are still summarizing only irrevocable trusts, and that's all they focus on. We don't focus only on irrevocable. We also focus on the revocable and judicial proceedings involving trusts. All right. So some of these trusts go through court because some of them are irrevocable and they've been given over to the court. It recognizes that trust can be created orally, but requires, so here we go. So I'm going to get y'all with this oral stuff that y'all keep doing with trust. Well, I believe that I trust them. I trust their mind. Okay, so we're going to show how you can't just trust somebody's mind. All right, you can do it. You can try. You can try. But we know that over time, that mind may forget. That mind may not work out the same way. That if you just want to do these oral trusts, right, they can be. You can create that oral trust and you can sit by honor and respect and believe that one is held to that trusted ability of oral trust. But okay, but there you go. Here's your convincing word, but requires clear and convincing evidence. That's right. So if you're not clearly convincing whoever you chose to do trust with, I don't care who they are. I don't care if you have it in your hand or you gave the document to them. You still haven't done clear and convincing evidence that you have built a trust. All right. So this is where I capture everybody at right here who thinks that this is a document that you can just pass on to somebody. You're just passing on the trust. You know, you're looking to avoid paying for something, or you're like, hey, I don't want to pay. I want to just do this. I want to just get some money, which is fine. I'm just showing you, you still have to give clear and convincing evidence that this is happening. All right. So this has to be clear and convincing that you're having this trust that's being developed or built with whoever you're going to be dealing with. This is going to prove, right? Let me see, make sure I got my. All right. So this is going to prove the terms of such trust, although written trust, either inter vivos or testamary or nearly universal in practice. So that's the living revocable trust, inter vivos. That's your living trust right here. That's what it means in Latin. Testamentary trust and so on. The UTC also includes a default rules that apply when a trust instrument is silent on certain matters. All right, so your trust may be silent, but you still need to do something where the trust involves that. So we have that instrument saying those things. The UTC also includes default rules that apply when a trust instrument is silent on certain matters, but generally defers to the settlor's express intentions in the trust document. So that's right. So all your intentions and will of what the way the trust is ran is already expressed in your trust document. In contrast, so this is your contrast to United States codes, trying to use the US codes, trying to use the federal courts, trying to use their courthouses with the trust. And we're going to prove to you that you're not supposed to use your trust in a format as a defendant in the courts. It doesn't really work out because you're not supposed to think of it that way. Only thing that you have in the courts that's a trust that was updated and converted is your name. So we're going to learn that your name is worth more than silver and gold. It's where your name is coming into the U.S. courts right here. So the United States Code, USC, contains federal statutory law, including tax provision that apply to trusts and estates. Specifically, Title 26 of the U.S. Code, which governs federal taxation, includes subchapter J of Chapter 1, dealing with the taxation of estates, trusts, and beneficiaries. This includes rules for taxing trust income, distribution to beneficiaries, and provisions related to grantor trusts, where the settlor is treated as the owner for tax purposes under section 671 and 679. So there we go. So some of y'all do those grantor trusts where you check off the box and you make, everything under the social, so you can start filing your trust on the 1040. But we don't teach that you use just the 1040 exclusively for your revocable living trust. You need to get the EIN, the revocable EIN, to operate from that. Thus, while state level trust law, often influenced by the UTC, governs the structure and operation of trust. There we go. So this goes right into the answer, how every one of y'all states has a trust law or a UTC code for the trust. And that's what you're supposed to be utilizing, this UTC code at all times. You're not supposed to be using their government laws, such as the federal law and United States Code this or United States Code that, or a statutory law this, statutory law that. Federal tax law as codified in U.S. Code determines how trusts are taxed. These two systems operate in parallel. The UTC and the state statutes define the legal framework for trusts, whereas the Internal Revenue Code establishes their federal tax treatment. That's right. So if you did your trust right with the EIN, then you know that your tax treatment is also done correctly when you utilize this type of framework of trust. All right. So I went into your answer for today, trust law versus U.S. codes, and I just totally destroyed the understanding of you having to use the corporate understanding. Right. So if you're still here and you're still trying to use the corporate understanding, or anybody's listening in, this is why it's taking so long. You're not supposed to use the corporation side to even understand your revocable trust. You're never supposed to use it. The only thing that I would say you can use is a sole proprietor bank accounts if you were to use their corporation. But you all go right back to the trust accounts. And we tell you that if you open a trust account, then you're giving jurisdiction as well to the bank, where the bank is now a co-trustee because you open up specifically a trust account. So we're not saying that it doesn't get money in the account, but we're going to show you how at that point they are able to have understanding or knowledge of how you're going to operate your trust. So that goes right back into some of my answers I went into earlier, why we use the sole proprietor and we use the revocable living trust exclusively, because we don't want you to get caught back up in the system of the United States codes, right? Because United States codes are what's catching you up And it's not necessarily the trust. It's not the revocable trust that's doing this to you. It's us in a way thinking of this. So this is why we go into our strategies and tell you all the methods of why. So it says today we will review why university technicians' 3-course strategy plan is required to know what to do while operating daily in the corporate system of United States. That's right. So we have cutting edge strategies and techniques of how you can do this. And this is no different than any other business that has strategies or techniques of how you operate. They were a corporation. So we specifically show you how to operate without the corporation. And this is very specific. You have to practice these strategies and you have to be able to perform them. It says why we should not use methods and strategies from corporate entities. This is a question. Why? I just went over that. Just showed you the United States codes are not going to exercise great understanding or authority or knowledge of trust. This is why when you guys go ask these people about trust, they have lack of understanding. They have no clue. And you all are forcing them saying, hey, a clerk must do this. You're going to be fined. I'm going to send you to prison and jail if you don't file my document. All right. So these are ways that you all are coming at this. But we know that this is not how a trust works. If you're coming at it this way, this means that you're not really in the trust realm yet. You're still in the United States Code realm, which now you're trying to use those codes as well as use those statutory laws, which we're going to get into this. We're going to show you why through our courses and through our strategy courses, we don't like to use these codes, right? Right. These are codes. We almost can say they're like part of the Black's Law Dictionary in a way. They're like codes. Okay. It says, how this is more than documents that come from the federal, state, county, city, and corporate laws and ordinances. That's right. So this is more than that. Right. So all the information and knowledge that you get from these 3 courses will get you more knowledge than what you would get from the federal government, the state, county, state offices, the county government offices or the courts, the city, right? The city officials and the commissioners and the city mayor and all these people and the corporate laws, right? So you got your corporations, you got your Amazon, you got your Apple, you got your Alphabet, right? Which is Google. You all thought that Google is just doing business as. That's what they're doing the game on y'all. Doing business as Google. But it's really the main corporation is called Alphabet LLC. All right. So that's the game. And that's all I'm saying is that you all are thinking that these documents are not the document or the instrument is not bypassing this. And it clearly just showed you in the UTC code that it does, if you choose to use the UTC code. Now, I understand that it's hard because we're trying to get back at somebody and we're trying to figure out how can I get revenge. And I'll get into this. It's like this revenge that you all are trying to get, or any format that you're trying to get back at somebody. I already explained to you that you should have already gave that affidavit and you're supposed to get paid for whatever has already happened to you. So at any event that you're not getting paid, then you're not actually operating your trust correctly because you're not collecting funds. All right. Why does university technicians charge money for? 1, the revocable trust strategy course. 2, the private banking strategy course. 3, the power of attorney strategy course. Right? Why does university technicians charge money? I just went over this. I just showed you that the trust is designed to gain wealth. Period. That's it. I mean, whatever way this corporation is set up, and they have all this corporate money and gold and silver and whatever credit, whatever that is, the goal is to gain all of that into the trust. So you're supposed to think the same way with your EIN. You're supposed to think of how are you going to gain in some format funds for your trust, because they call it trust fund. All right. So some of us are still kind of complicating this thing because we already know it's in the world already. We already know there's trust funds and there's people with trust funds. But you all keep looking at this from the perspective of the United States codes. So let's get right back into it. This is why university technicians charges for this, because these are strategies that are going to be utilized and given out privately to only members. All right. So this is only for members only. And let's get into some of those details of the revocable trust strategy course, the private banking strategy course, and the power of attorney real quick. So I'll get into some of those because some of these things we may have missed, even though some of us have went through this information over and over again. I just want to make sure that you're going through all this on a weekly basis, practicing the same things over and over again. All right, so it says, welcome to University Technicians Digital Business Network. Here's your new member guide. What you get 24/7 University Technicians. You log in to chat. Just like any place, you want to be able to chat 24/7. So if you have questions or thoughts, you want to go ahead and chat that information into the system. Call the 1-800 number. We have that. You want to talk to somebody, you press 0. These are the direct line numbers and so on. So contact is very important for your business or your trust entity. You all have to copy the same things that you see that University Technicians has. You may not be 24/7, but you need to have at least a contact and support option for your trust entity. Beneficiary membership fees. So we have member fees that you all are using in order to gain access to the trust. So this is part of the monthly 10 coins or yearly 120 coins. You can cancel or deactivate anytime, purchase your plan here. So this is required before you start services. You can't just jump into the services and buy them without being a member. But this is the same way you all should set up your trust or your employer instruments, because I'm going to get into details in a little bit to show you why this is formatted this way. Overview of services. So we don't depend on people paying us for trust. Like if you don't have money to pay us to do a trust or a strategy, that's not how we make our money. Our services come from electronic device repair and support. So we don't deal with just primarily trust, or we just around helping people do taxes. This isn't our primary thing. We're going to show you in detail what we do. So we do electronic device repair and support. So we give you electronic support for your device. Some of you all don't even know how to use Zoom. Some people need to learn how to download Zoom on their laptop, or even how to use an Apple phone, how to search Google. So this is support. As far as we're concerned, this costs funding and time and money, right? So this is part of services. And we do this on-site drop-off. So like I say, this is just a layer of showing where your trust needs to be. It needs to be where it's a foundation that you're collecting funding that is not dependent upon the corporation or dependent upon the government. All right, we're going to get into this layer. We have digital private support rooms available. That means that's a service. So if you don't have a digital room, then this is what we provide for you as a service. 2-year warranty on new devices. So if you buy a new device through us, whether it's a computer, a phone, a tablet, whatever it is, you get warranty if you buy it through us. But if you buy it through Walmart, or if you go to wherever else, then we don't know. It may break, and then they're gonna say, "Hey, we're sorry, got to buy another one." All right, so you can book your repairs with us if something breaks. So we have all these things already covered and layered. As we say, our first bread and butter of the business is electronic device repair and support. Our second layer of the business that we have is tax software walkthrough support. This is one of the biggest things that I see a lot of people get confused of, is that you're not doing taxes, you're actually using software. So you want to be able to use this tax software support so that you can know how to walk through this software to do all these things that you all understand with your trust instruments. We're going to say your trust EINs. That's what it is, your trust EINs and your social. So we deal with private Zoom rooms only. And this is how we do business. If you don't want to be in a private Zoom room, then we can't guarantee you can get those results. We can't just, it can't be a quick phone call asking questions and putting in answers real quick and seeing that, hey, did this work or this didn't work? Well, we don't know because you weren't in a private Zoom room. Supported platforms we use is freetaxusa.com. We use taxact.com. We use tax1099.com, and we use the irs.gov. So these are your supported platforms that you want to utilize to navigate their system. If you're not mastering these are our techniques. That's why I say we go through the walkthrough. If you're not mastering this, then it's going to be very difficult for you all to utilize the trust. freetaxusa.com, that's your 1040 sole proprietor. You need to have mastered that. You got your taxact.com, the 1041 estates and trusts. So this is how you file your 1041s. You want to use this. Your 1099s, right? So this covers all entities as we went over in tax1099.com. irs.gov, you get your free forms and your info. All right, so this is very important that you all are starting to understand how you're able to utilize, which we say the tools and the resources, as we say, as walkthroughs or support. You know, it's very, very easy to do and start, but not very easy to finish. Number three, what do we also offer? We offer private banking and business credit setup, right? So we don't get into personal credit. We already told everyone this from the beginning. If you're going to deal with a trust, if you're going to deal with a revocable EIN, you cannot be stuck on personal credit. So many times we got people that are still dealing with personal credit, right? And why they're dealing with personal credit, this right here is going to be the reason why the business credit doesn't get set up. Okay, so it's very important that you all do not get stuck in the realm of, which we say, personal credit. We're not here to help you with personal credit. We're here to help you with business credit. Doesn't matter if you're trying to buy that house for the first time. All right. So we want to make sure it's clear. It doesn't matter if you're trying to buy this house for the first time and like, hey, I'm gonna buy this house and I'm gonna move it to my trust. It doesn't work because you got the house in your personal credit. All right. You got the car in the personal credit. We don't do personal credit. We only do private banking and business credit. Now, the reason we think of this because we don't want you all to be so stuck on the social card as if you're going to do something different with the individual. You're not able to do that. So all you can do is work on the sole proprietor that we always tell you is going to always immediately bring you into the business. As you know, first, we're going to get into digital wallets. So if you don't have that yet, that goes right into our top layer of private banking level 3 courses. So in our private banking course, you do have 3 layers or 3 levels. So that gets to our top layer, top level is digital wallets. Once you have mastered that, you're at the top layer of which we call the modern world that we live in today. Digital wallet is going to be dealing with gold, silver, stable coins, blockchain tech. Business credit setup and support. That's right. So you all should have business credit for all of your EINs, even your social. That's right. Your social should show up as business credit. Tools and resources. These tools and resources we're going to show you are going to be dealing with USPS money orders. That's at the top of this system. So in United States, the top of dealing with business with them, I don't care who they are required to accept a USPS money order. If you got to get 4 of them, then get 4 USPS money orders to pay them, whoever it is that's asking you for the money. The next layer is a Bank of America, credit unions, others, and small businesses. So that's when you get into the banking system. So once you get into the banking system, you make sure you're in the small business side of the bank and you're not on the personal. And it should be a credit union. It could be others. It could be Bank of America, but we want to make sure that you have a small business. It's very important that you all are looking at these layers of strategy because this is all part of your strategy course, private banking and business credit setup. PayPal business, right? We talked about how you need a PayPal, right? So if you're getting paid, how can you get paid if nobody's paying your PayPal? It's one of your first tests. If you can't get paid on PayPal, we know you can't get paid on your merchant account with a bank, right? We know that you can't, you know, it's not going to work. This is your first thing first. If you're going to get paid with credit cards, debit cards, or even just no cards at all, just PayPal to PayPal, which is really the best way. If you go from PayPal to PayPal, it's almost like it's free. It actually ends up being free. Depends on the situation or the setup. Next is your Duns and Bradstreet. Some people get lost in the sauce on Duns and Bradstreet. All right. So we say DNB is just a layer for listing yourself. You should be found on DNB. Experian business account. That's right. So we should see you on Experian. And I didn't list the rest of them, but I just wanted to use Experian as a first layer to show you that there's a business side of Experian. You all are just still dealing with the personal side, but you're trying to get this high personal credit score. So you got to get out of that mind. We don't want to deal with personal credit. All right, so let's go into our next course layer. Went through private banking and business credit setup. Next is your e-business setup and digital storefronts. All right, so this is big because I think this is dealing with your power of attorney as much as possible because you're now dealing with running and operating a business that's stable and you understand how to deal with, which we say, a day-to-day base of business. So we actually offer you a digital office. You get access to a free digital office if you pay for certain, packages we have. But if you don't have those packages, then you are able to go directly to our places to get there. So let's go from the first top. Transform your business into an e-commerce brand. So in this world today, you have to move these trusts into e-commerce. Every trust name that you have has to have an e-commerce brand. Setup includes domain, website, and virtual office. That means that you need to be set up. Once you have this trust in place, you need to have a domain, a website, and a virtual office. This is required. If you're going to do real business, if you're going to actually have a real business in this modern world. Like if you walk to Walmart and you said Walmart don't got something right, you ought to be all over Walmart, right? You go to Dollar Tree, wherever these places, you need to make sure they all have these things that are required to do business in this world. Recommended tools, we already told you, it's a digital office. You got your Wix.com, which we help everybody with the Wix app. I went over this for years. I kept saying, yes, download the Wix app, because if you don't know how to use Wix app, then it's going to be difficult for you all to use Facebook. But some people don't even know how to get money on Facebook with their business. We don't know how to just create a business account on Facebook. It's so simple. You just go in, you log in and say, hey, I want to click on business account. So we're going to say everything that you do from here on out needs to be a business account. If it doesn't say business, that means you haven't created the account correctly. Namecheap.com is domain. Some people have other places you can get it. And Zoom is how you create your virtual meeting rooms. And as you can see, you need help right away. You can call us. You can do all these things. As said from the top. Your membership fee is required before service begins. Cancel anytime. Long-term obligation. All right, so that answers everything that I was able to go through, some of the services and products that we offer and why it's important, because some people will ask, but why is University Technicians charging? Why are you charging for this information? Right? Well, we're not charging you for information. We're charging you for strategy. All right, we're charging you for walking you through the strategies of using all that information we just gave you for free. Because you can know where everything is at, but you still need strategies on how to utilize all these things that you say that you're able to do. So our next part that I want to go into is to show, how do you keep your name from being used improperly by any and all corporate entities, including the IRS and police departments? That's very important, because the police departments and the IRS, they work together. So a lot of you don't know this, but you're thinking the IRS is this low-level entity. But today I'm going to prove to you that the IRS is the chief law enforcement agency in the world. So whatever's right in the IRS system should be right in the police system. Whatever's in the police system should be right in the IRS system. So we're going from the highest to the lowest. Some of us are still stuck on trying to send forms to the police department. You don't send forms to them. It's going to get into layers of why this trust instrument is so important for us to start off in the beginning. Now, what layers us is to know that you're not supposed to be under the corporate codes that we just realized that is, because that's a corporate entity. If you're dealing with police departments and you're dealing with the IRS, believe it or not, is a corporate entity. All right. So you have to understand, you have to know this, that you don't want to go under their jurisdiction. How do you not go under the jurisdiction? You're supposed to use the revocable living trust, and you're supposed to use your instrument. Now, the reason why some people have interaction with the police is because you all are operating in these vessels or these vehicles where somebody still will feel that, hey, I want to operate in this vessel or this vehicle without a plate, without insurance, without tags, with my license being suspended, without having any identification. These are things that are going to get you caught up with your name being used improperly. I'm sorry to tell you, because you got to keep your name from being used improperly by any and all corporate entities, right? That includes the IRS, right? So if you're still getting caught up by the IRS and you're still getting caught up by the police, this is still the same thing, because they're improperly using your name. And this is why your name has to be more than silver and gold. And this is why these trust courses keep your name from being used this way. Now, if you have past situations that you made an agreement with to complete, then that is not going to be something that you can simply just get rid of fast or easy. So you have to fight your way through by explaining that you are different. You have reformed yourself if this is something in the past. Now, if this is something in the present, after you got your revocable living trust, there's two things that you're not using if you're still dealing with this problem. It's your affidavit and your revocable living trust instrument. And we're not saying you're supposed to be handing it to them because you're in trouble. So we got to be careful with the way we're thinking about this, because we could be possibly creating this improper usage of our name, which we don't want to do this, right? So how do you keep this? Let's go into some of the answers that we have below. Once you have executed the revocable living trust, you are to make all things around you a business that is designed to what? Collect money. Here we go. So that goes right back to the answer. That means that you're not collecting money from the police station or the city, because the city is really where the money's coming from. So you need to be looking at this from a standard of, hey, I have a fee affidavit. Hey, you're utilizing my information. I have a power of attorney. I need to go ahead and get access to funding because you're utilizing my name without my permission or improperly using my name, right? This is where it starts. But once again, you have to know who you're supposed to talk to. So most of the time, if you're dealing with your city, we'll get into some of these things next week. I'll go into some layers. You're supposed to be dealing with your city attorney. If you're dealing with a county, you're supposed to be dealing with your county attorney. If you're dealing with your state, you're supposed to be dealing with your attorney general. All right. So the state, county, these are entities, right? So these are all your corporate entities. You need to be thinking about, hey, they're using my name. I need to collect money from them. And a lot of this stuff goes through what they call mediation, or it can go into something called civil claims, if it goes that far. All right. So once you execute your trust, you are required in a format, as we say through our courses, to charge money for usage of the name, right? We're saying on the most basic level of doing business out here, usage of the name. Each and every trust employer identification number is considered a business ready to operate and gain revenue for the employer identity for trust fund. That's right. So every time you create a EIN document, every one of those EINs or those trust EINs is considered a business ready to go. As soon as you got the EIN printout, you all are still sitting on the EIN. So I'm telling you, the EIN printout is a business, right? I mean, that is a business. So you're supposed to use that business, and you're not supposed to feel like, hey, I got to go to the state. I got to go to the county. I got to go to the city, and I got to ask them, is over everything okay for me to use my business? Because I don't want to get arrested. I don't want to do this. I don't want that. So you all are putting yourself right under their jurisdiction again. So I'm explaining this on the most basic level. The reason why you're supposed to use the affidavit, right? So this affidavit is going to give you this power to understand why your business is ready to gain revenue, to operate and gain revenue for the employer identity trust fund. All right. So every time your name is being utilized, that should be collected as a fund. I'm going to give you all another diagram that helps you feel confident. Depends on where you are in your state. So I'm going to give you all an access point to something that I had as well. And why I say it is you're supposed to also do your name. All right. So once you have your name registered in the system as a fictitious name or a trade name or whatever that is, in some states it says trade name, some says assumed name, some says a fictitious name. So in this specific state that I'm in, the state of Florida, I need the fictitious name of my name, because this name is a business now, because I have moved myself into a sole proprietor, and I need to collect funds for this sole proprietor. I'm not here just to have it and just say, hey, the government owes me a whole bunch of money. That is not how it works. It is you making sure you're collecting the funds from whoever is still doing business with you, because you have now registered your name as a business. You want to make sure that your name is active at all times so that you're able to utilize all the functions of this name collecting funds as a business. So this is just an example of how to look if you had that certificate of status. This is another example. Some of you may have got the assumed name in Minnesota, right? So assumed name in Minnesota is another layer that some of us have thought of and some of us have done. But you also have to maintain that active status of this because this assumed name is designed for you to make sure that it's in the newspaper. So you keep this active, and you also have the newspaper affidavit. And you're continually utilizing this information by giving notice of it every time that you're doing business with anyone. So when I look this up, I should be able to find my name. My name should show that it is active because I have shown that my name is certified, is a certificate of existence, and it is officially registered to do business. All right, so let's get into this next part. And that is showing that each and every trust employer identification number is considered a business-ready entity. Let me give you all an example of how a trust EIN looks. Some of you probably have seen one before, but I'm going to go into an example of how one looks because some still may need to see how the EIN looks. All right, so here we go. So here's an EIN. That's not coming up easily. Let's see if this one works. Yeah, here we go. So this is the EIN that I would have as a printout. This will always be utilized for me to operate through their system. So I'll always use this printout. I wouldn't be trying to use any other personal means of doing business. And you also need to read through this to make sure that you're doing everything that it says to do on this document because it tells you all the steps. You know, it says every step. It gives you your employer identification number. It tells you who to call if you need questions. This is an old one because I know the number is updated and changed. It tells you, thank you for applying for employer identification. We assigned you this EIN. This EIN will identify your estate of trust. So you are now to identify yourself with this document. If you are not the applicant, please contact the individual who's handling the estate or trust for you. Please keep this notice in your permanent records. When filing tax documents, payments, and related correspondence, it is very important that you use your EIN and complete name and address exactly as shown above. So that means whatever you got on this document needs to be exactly what you put on your information. All right, so you must tear off this stub if you want to communicate, and you're going to file Form 1041. So this is important that you all start to see Form 1041 as a requirement. We're going to say it's required for you at some point. If you have this documents or if you're out here using a trust, you need to file a 1041. Right? Why does this make sense? Because it's showing that you have fiduciary power. What else proves that you're actively doing anything except you filing your taxes? So Form 1041, it says I needed to file it by that date, and I did. I had to file the 1041 for 2017 and forward. So all the way since 2017, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, I'm required to file. If you have any questions about the forms or the due date shown, you can call us at the phone number or write us at the address shown at the top of the notice. That's right. So don't ask us questions. Ask the IRS. It's not like my answers are going to be more than the IRS's answer. I'm just going to tell you what they've already said anyway. So you all are supposed to be calling the IRS. You're supposed to be writing them. You're supposed to be faxing them. That's why I said these are the methods of affidavits. So your first affidavits need to be communicating to the IRS, to the Treasury. And if it works with the Treasury or the IRS, it's going to also work with the police station. That's right. So it's going to work with the police. It's going to work with the city. But if you're not right at the top, then it ain't going to be right at the bottom. All right, so we assign your tax classification based on the information obtained from you or your representative. So that means they gave me a tax classification that doesn't put me under the United States Code. So why am I reading this? Because if you all didn't read this, it tells you everything it says. You should not be under the United States Code. You should be going through our estates and trust code that they told you in Title 26. And we also directed you that federal law doesn't direct trust at this point at all, or we will never do it. But we have given this authority and power over to your state. Okay. Going back to our notes that we went over for those who have came in, and we're still seeing trust law versus United States codes. So for all of you all still stuck in the US codes, 18 United States codes and 20, all these codes, right? You don't use the United States codes. You're supposed to use trust law. Now, use those as definitions. We're not saying don't use them to present definitions. We're saying don't think that this is for your trust. All right. So if you got to use it for examples to prove things, then fine. But we're saying at this point, if you are using a trust, there's no need to use a US code. All right. There's no need for a US code if you're using your trust all the time. So that'll put you into the Uniform Trust Code. And they say that if you do the USC or US code, this contains federal statutory law, including tax provisions that apply to trusts in the states. That's right. So you even have to see that it's going to lead you to the right place, even if you choose to use the federal codes. Now, with that being said, we're going to go right back to the example. Let me see where we at on this image. All right, so now we see that the IRS document that y'all got printed out, when you printed it out, when you got the EIN, even if you did it without us, because we want you to know everything in and out. That's why we do strategies. Because if you didn't know this and you've been living like this whole time, this means you haven't read the document. Read that line by line, little by little, until you fully not have knowledge and understanding. And if you don't know, you got to ask them questions. You got to write them. It says, if you want a legal determination of your tax classification, you may request a private letter. That's right. So that means if you really want to know what your classification is, you better call them, or not call them. You got to request it in writing. Request a private letter ruling from the IRS under the guidelines and revenue procedure 2004-1, 2004-1 IRB, or superseding revenue procedure for the same year at issue. Note, certain tax classification elections can be requested by filing form 8832. Look at that. Entity classification election. So now they're giving you more forms that you can look into to understand. So you got your form 8832 that gives you your classification form 2 to classify your trust, classify your status, your social, your sole proprietor, and so on. Now, I can't get to that because most of you all are not ready because you're not even on the foundation yet, which I just explained is the 1041. This is what opens the whole gate, form 1041. Because they're telling you all this before you get down there. And it didn't say you may. It says, based on the information received from you or your representatives, you must file. All right. You must file. It didn't say you may, you may do what you want to do later on because you got to trust. No, it says you must file because we got to prove that you're living. We got to prove that you're really out here doing business. You're really out here gaining revenue for the trust. You're gaining trust funds. So I know this is difficult for some of us because we have this problem with money. And I already told you all that you're not supposed to be collecting Federal Reserve notes primarily. Why are you collecting Federal Reserve notes primarily? Why are you not collecting lawful currency, not legal currency or legal tender? They don't even call it currency. It's called legal tender. Why are you not collecting lawful currency? So we don't have any remedy for you if you're not thinking this way as a business, because the business is designed to gain revenue. So let's go back to this part, and I'm going to close this out from this. We only got a little bit more to go. It says each and every trust employer identification number is considered a business ready to operate and gain revenue for the employer identity trust fund. That's right. So that EIN document and that EIN printout is what makes your business ready. You are to create a fee schedule through your newspaper affidavit, which is designed to show that your business is open and operating. That's right. So I went into that fee schedule again to show you all that that's one layer of my fee schedule. So I got the newspaper affidavit, which proves my business has been properly noticed right in the newspaper as the state requires. They say 2 consecutive issues, right? So you want to do that with 2 consecutive issues, and you got to do it right the first time. That way you don't pay more money, which is designed to show that your business is open and operating. Your name is designed to collect funds. There we go. So that's the big part right here. Your name, the same way that y'all was trying to collect funds in the corporation when you was working is the same way you need to be collecting funds when you're not in the corporation and you're not working. And it's so easy because if you work for the trust all day, you're working for your employer, which is your revocable trust, then this is a new employer. Right. So your revocable trust is the main employer to be working for. So that's why you collecting funds. All right. Very, very interesting. So your name is designed to collect funds from any and all entities that are in the corporation. That's right. That are in the corporation. Right. The banks, the people on the stock market, all these people, all these different entities, you all are giving all this money. You're supposed to be collecting money from them. Very interesting. It says, and unincorporated entities that are even private. That's right. So even if you're a private, you got your trust private, you got all this private information, well, you should have some funds, or you should be able to barter and exchange some stuff, even if you private, right? So you private, you got access to all this stuff, and you got your trust, you got all these documents. Well, you should have some private wealth. All right, you should have some private wealth. However way that looks, because when you got to utilize that to do some business, everybody should be bartering, exchanging cash, credit, gold, silver, as we went over earlier in our private banking course. We never said anything about Federal Reserve notes, because everybody's still stuck on Federal Reserve notes being primarily the money. So even in the private side, we have a value system that's already designed. Okay, so we have to look at this from a standard of value. All right, so let's get into some of the questions somebody may have said. They also mentioned something about the United States Patent Office. So we're going to get into why we're not telling you the USPTO office first, because what you're doing is you're going under the corporation, which are the lawyers of the corporation, to create a patent trademark. All right. And I know this may sound that is counterproductive, but we understand some have done this, and I understand that it still can be done, even if you want to do it. That's fine. But you still got to know that really the United States government is making this determination for your trust. And we already said that your US codes are not necessarily for the trust. And we mean that's your name, and we're also saying that's your trust EINs. So yes, you can do it, but it'll just be for the individual side, right? It'll be for the individual that is basically operating with the United States Patent Trademark Office, right? So that'll be just the individual that is looking to be protected. But even still, they may not fully protect you, as we see that we have cases of people who had the patent trademark. Shout out to Sister Sophia Stewart. She had the patents, trademarks, and all these different rights and copyrights and everything. And she still didn't get her money from the people that created the Matrix. So we're just saying, hey, it may look powerful, but until you get a payment, until you get a payout, we're not telling everybody to go and spend all their money on the United States Patent Trademark Office. So We want you all to look at this from a perspective of collecting funds, right? Your name is designed to collect funds from any and all entities, that are in the corporation and people that's not in the corporation. You on the outside, you unincorporated, but you need some services, you need some products, you need some of these, whatever it is, right? So this is going to get to the last part for the day, as we understand that everything is all about business. We're going to say that you are now operating a business, and we want to make sure you're operating through the uniform trust codes, right? We no longer want you to operate through the codes of the United States Incorporated. All right, because you all have to overcome this. And if you don't do this, then you're always going to be under the IRS and the police. That's right. So because how do you keep your name from being used improperly by any and all corporate entities, including the IRS and police departments? See, some of us are still stuck on this because you're still coming at it in a way that's not going to win, because you can't win trying to face them inside with their codes. They'll tell you use their codes against them. Well, we're learning that you can't technically use those things with the trust. So on the bottom, we're going to say utilize barter and trade without United States. So we already went over that you all are thinking primarily to use the Federal Reserve notes. No, you need to figure out how to barter and trade with each other's trusts, including university technicians, however way this works. And you need to do this. If you can't figure it out, then you're not in trust because you don't know how to live without the United States. Because everything is not cash dollar bills. As we went over, that is not the cash. That's not the money. That's not lawful currency. That's not, which we say that's the legal tender. Or any world banking system entity to overcome courts. All right. So if you want to use the world banking system entity to overcome courts, well, we already said that this is part of your sole proprietor, that if you do that is going to be a step for you to use the sole proprietor social security card account, not the EIN that you get from the IRS, because once again, you got the EIN from the IRS, but the social card, this is coming from a private trust entity, which we know the social security card trust is a trust account. Very important that you remember that the social security card is a trust account. This is best done by giving a sole truth and affidavit to each and every entity you do business with to remain functions in a living trust. All right, so that is my last part for today on our announcements, and we're going to be closing with this last affidavit that I have right here. And I'm going to give in detail of how this fee schedule and how all these things are already in place. If you do it correctly, it's already there. That means that the newspaper is the affidavit. And then you got your revocable trust. That's also an affidavit. And then the last thing we're going to do is give a written document, which I'm going to give you all an example in just a moment, that I was able to create with myself. And this should be the foundation, because some of these documents, some of us are trying to create to make it look different or make it look new. Well, it can't get no more different than what we already have in place. And it's all right. Copy the right cat. They always say, if you're going to be a copycat, make sure you copy the right cat. If you copy the wrong cat, you may be putting yourself further down into some processes and some issues that are not really working out. So as I close from this, our revocable living trust, we go into all the courses that some of us say these are the people that you're going to be in their hand, right? So they're looking at your documents like, wow, we can't even do anything to this guy. They have their trust. They got all their strategy. Wow, they're together. So these are your lawyers. These are your lawyers that you're supposed to be facing that you all are not able to face yet, because you haven't taken power of attorney. You haven't taken over your name. You haven't functioned through your name. And we mean this is a strategy. This is not a document thing, because somebody can look at a document all day, but now they're going to ask you a question and you're scratching your head because you didn't memorize what was on the document. So we know this isn't a document game. We can give you a free document. I can hand you every single document that I got, which I always show on the screen anyway. This doesn't stop you. Actually, it doesn't work for you if you actually don't strategize, utilize the strategies that you're supposed to use. So that's what these courses are for. So we go through all these courses to make sure that everyone understands where this is coming from and the value. Without further ado, I'll go into our last part. It's the meat of our discussion. And this will be our last part. I'll be closing out as the affidavit for the affidavit of fact or truth. So this will be my main affidavit that I'll be utilizing if I'm going to be communicating with entities at any point, even if it's a trust or it's an entity that has my name. So it can be the trust document or it can be my name. It could be both, right? So we're going to get into that information in just a moment. Let me answer this question. It says, do we file the fee schedule on the county record? Short answer is no, you don't file the fee schedule because you get the affidavit through the newspaper. So the newspaper will file it on the county record for you. So it's free. If you pay the newspaper will send you back the affidavit in the mail. And within that state, they're required to actually add it on the county record. So you should be able to find your legal notice on the county record through the newspaper. So that's how this works. They even have that set up for the Uniform Trust Code for the newspapers. So I want to make sure this looks plain to us that I showed you all the example of mine being from the newspaper, because the newspaper affidavit was one of the main utilities that gets you through the layers of the trust. Get out of that. Let's see if I can find. Where is it at again? Thought I had it right here. Newspaper affidavit. Where is it at? There you go, right here. Well, this is the one that I have. It says Pensacola News Journal. All right, here we go. So this is just an example of a cutoff part of it, but let me just go back to it. This is what I meant by it being an affidavit. So this actually comes back to you in the mail as an affidavit. And you want to make sure you have all this information written on there with your fee schedule, notice of fee schedules. Okay, so I put this into my newspaper affidavit. All right, so I'm going to make it a lot easier for people to follow and understand. So along with this, I have this affidavit, I have the revocable trust, and now I have a written document that I'm going to show you all how you're supposed to utilize through the courts, as well as utilize with any of these entities that are in the United States, as I mentioned in the notes earlier and previous. So the affidavit of fact or truth in the nature of supplemental rules for administrative and maritime claims, rules C6. So that's where you need to title your document. This is the beginning of your affidavit. So you got to make sure that you're staying out of the, which we're saying out of the water, because once you go into the commercial realm, this will be the Uniform Commercial Code that we say that you're no longer supposed to be in either, because we know that the debtors are in the United States Uniform Commercial Code. All right, so we don't want you to be into the Uniform Commercial Code because this gets you into maritime claims. That's why a lot of people are stuck in mortgages, because their mortgage and all these different things are stuck in the maritime claim. And we got to get you out of the water. So the goal is to get it into the revocable living trust. And this is going to allow you to move yourself into the correct format. So I haven't shared this with anybody because on purpose, I like to write things as I go. So I'm just going to share this with you all today, and we're going to close out. So at the top, I have my certified or registered mail sticker right here. And I will just put that right there at the top, or I can just write it. It doesn't matter. So it says in commerce, everything must be stated in facts or truth. So I say facts because the world likes to say facts. I say truth. So I'm going to say facts of truth. I, Wallace Lewis Temple Jr., a private Native American man, right? Because I'm a Native man of America. I'm not over in other countries. I'm here in America. A living soul, a creditor, claimant, secure party, and not a statutory person on earth. That's that. So I'm not a statutory person, because if you don't rebut the claim that you're a statutory person, then you're going to be assumed you are. Upon the land of Florida, a republic in the county called Leon, do hereby solemnly declare, say, and state. So that means I'm on the land, I'm in a republic, to the republic for which it stands, not the flag. You know, so a lot of people look at the flag and it's like, no, it's not the flag, it's the republic, to the republic for which it stands. See, the flag can't stand unless it's on the republic. So we're going to get into details of this later. 1, a secured party is competent for stating the matter set forth herewith. 2, a secured party has personal knowledge about the facts stated herein. 3, everything stated in this affidavit is fact or the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth. And all stated is true, correct, complete, and not misleading. No third parties allowed. That means no lawyers. No lawyers. I don't need a third party. Plain statement about the facts. A, for resolving a matter, it must be expressed. B, in commerce, facts or truth is sovereign. C, facts of truth is expressed in the affidavit format. D, a unrebutted or failure to respond to affidavit stands as facts of truth in commerce. E, an unrebutted or failure to respond affidavit becomes the judgment in commerce. F, a fact of truth affidavit under the commercial uniform law can only be satisfied by rebuttal or response about the fact of truth affidavit, by full payment, by negotiated settlement agreement, by resolution by a jury, or counsel according to the rules set for what? Common law. So now we're moving you all into the common law realm because that's where you should be at all times if you are going to be dealing with a revocable living trust. That includes your EIN and includes your social security card, which is supposed to be a sole proprietor. We didn't say get a sole proprietor EIN printout because you're going to confuse yourself if you're trying to use a sole proprietor EIN printout. You all are thinking about the bank accounts. And I always tell you, do not get stuck in their banking system because you're trying so hard to open up a bank account. You don't want to do that. All right. So we went over this last week and the week before, and I already showed you, what if you get a check and now you're stuck on moving it over to a bank and now all your money is gone? All right. So we got to get out of this mindset that you have the answer, and the answer is for you to think of getting a bank. All right. So let's go into this last part. It says a lawful contract has an offer. That's right. So you got to make an offer. That means money. Period. Like if you're not thinking about money with the trust, then there's a problem. We're not talking about Federal Reserve notes. Be very careful with the mindset of you thinking of it as Federal Reserve notes. So at any point in time, it has to be an offer, a consideration. Number 2. 3, acceptance by all parties for the contract. And 4, the natural signatures by all parties involved with the contract. That means natural signatures by natural persons or a man or a woman. There has to be a signature somewhere. Only the parties signing or signed the contract will participate in the discussion or meetings of the contract. Full disclosure about the contract is non-negotiable and imperative. Notice to principal is notice to agents, and notice to agents is notice to principals. There we go. So I went over it from the police to the IRS. So that means notice to the lowest all the way to the highest. So that means the police department all the way to the federal government department, which is the IRS, the government department. That's your federal and law enforcement, leader of all law enforcement. It's very important that you all think of this on the highest level and then move it down to the lowest rather than starting at the lowest level, talking to the police, thinking they're going to do stuff and they have to understand stuff. And the answer is no. You're supposed to have started at the top, talking to them. Then you're supposed to move it down to the bottom as your responses that you receive back from them, which is the IRS. Like I said, I showed you all letters, response letters. So there's unrebutted affidavits. So that means you will not be able to rebut my affidavit because you have to prove that I didn't talk to the IRS. All right. So very important that you all start to see and understand why affidavits are written the way I'm writing it and why I'm doing this way, because this is not the same that I've seen people do. So I see myself as the grantor, and the all caps name, the social security card, is now a grantor. I put my signature or autograph here because signature, autograph is one and the same. And I am the grantor now. Every time I have an autograph or a signature on the document, whatever it is, I can scribble scrabble. It's still me, my living signature on the document as a grantor, not as a mortgagee, not as a individual, not as any of these other things that we sign documents for, but a grantor. Very important. All right. So next, I'm getting into my truth affidavit guidelines, maxims of commercial law. So I'm using the scriptures. As I said, the Bible is the law of the land. So y'all got to start understanding the maxims of commercial law. So I add this as an attachment to my affidavit. You know, a workman's worthy of his hire. So that means that's why I'm telling you I have to collect money. University technicians has to charge because according to the law, workman is worthy of his hire. You know, so there's no way to look at this. So there's no way that you can work for free because then you would cause someone to be in fraud or infringement of your workmanship. So there's no such thing. Even if you chose to get the money and you donated it immediately to some cause, that's fine. But we're saying that you can't say that you can't collect money because you don't believe in it or something like that. It doesn't make sense because money isn't Federal Reserve notes. So I know this doesn't make sense to a lot of people, but we have to be able to teach it and understand it as much as possible. 2, all are equal under the law. That's right. If you're on the commercial side, then all are not equal. But if you're on the common law side, guess what? All are equal under the law. We don't care how big you are. You could be a billionaire all the way down to the guy who don't have no money in his bank account, $0. All right. So all are equal under the law. So all these people who work for the corporations as the CEOs or financial managers, they have to manage the laws as well. 3, in commerce, truth is sovereign. So the truth is sovereign to the people in commerce. That means once you do an affidavit, they have to rebut it or it becomes sovereign. Truth is expressed by means of an affidavit. So you got to have an affidavit in order to express the truth or to create facts. 5, an unrebutted affidavit stands as truth in commerce. That's right, because you got to use scriptures. You're using this in honor, respect, integrity, love, patience, all these things that you're saying that you're going to do. So you can't do this. And that's why we say we know people are trying to get vengeance or trying to figure out a way to get back at people, get back at companies, things like that. But you can't think of it like in a format that is going to cause you not to get remedy. Say unrebutted affidavit becomes the judgment in commerce. That's right. Any proceeding in a court, tribunal, or arbitration forum consists of contest or duel. That's right. So once I get into a court and I have these documents in hand and I've already communicated with you, all I got to do is give this document to the court and this will resolve my proceeding. Of commercial affidavits wherein the points remaining unrebutted in the end stand as the truth and the matters to which the judgment of law is applied. That's right. So that means that I basically was already on guard and I knew that if these types of things happen and I didn't get a response, then I already have this affidavit ready to go. 7, a matter must be expressed to be resolved. That's right. So you got to let them know. You didn't let them know. You didn't tell them that you had some rights. You didn't tell them, here's this affidavit that I'm supposed to give you. I'm going to show you this affidavit of me being non-commercial. 8, he who leaves the field of battle first loses by default. That's right. So when we leave court, when they tell y'all to go show up, don't show up, you know, special appearance, all these things. And guess what? You lost. You know, they lied. They told you all this stuff. It was false. You lost because if you're not standing there to stand on your paper, you're not living there. You're the standing on the paper. You're not the understanding now, because if you're just understanding, you're just there because they called you in and they say, hey, you know, you owe some money, you know, because you're not collecting money now if you're just storing up. Yeah, you're there because you owe some money. So he who lives to field the battle first loses by default. Legal maxim, he who does not repel a wrong when he can occasions it. That's right. So if something is wrong, you're supposed to repel that wrong by correcting that wrong. And you can't be combative and argumentative with their codes. It should always be trust law. Nine, sacrifice is the measure of credibility. One who is not damaged, put at risk, or willing to swear an oath that he consents to claim against his commercial liability in the event that any of his statements or action is groundless or unlawful, has no basis to assert claims or charges, and forfeits all credibility and right to claim authority. There you go. So that means that anyone who doesn't sign on a penalty of perjury or sign as telling the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth, then they have lost all credibility. It doesn't matter if they actually had a real claim. You got to be willing to put the whole company on the line. You got to be willing to put the whole trust on the line because you know you telling the truth. That's what this says. If you don't know and you're like all shaking, you don't really understand it. That means that you're not really in the trust yet. You're in the codes. You got to be on the trust side. Number 10, a lien or claim can be satisfied only through rebuttal by counter affidavit, point for point, resolution by jury, or payment. That's right. So you got to be ready for the payment. If you gave an affidavit and it shows on the bottom how much it costs, if you do not rebut this affidavit, here's my counter affidavit to your claim that you have placed against me, state of whatever, or county of this, or whatever, right? It could be Walmart, anything, right? These are all entities and corporation. Where is your counter affidavit to the claims that they said that you did? You're supposed to respond point for point, and you're also supposed to put in all of your asserted claims and charges for using your name. If the plaintiff does not prove his case, the defendant is absolved. There you go. And we know that most of the time you all are the defendants in cases. You are always the respondents and defendants. So I'm showing you this is how you respond and defend yourself the correct way, because you got to give them a counterclaim or a counter. We're not going to say claim. We're going to say you're going to give them a counter affidavit. So here's a counter affidavit I'm going to give you all as I close out for today. So here we go. Truth affidavit. Point 1. I'm the fiduciary or trustee for the account name. No, I'm going to start at the top. Truth affidavit, acceptance for value and honor. So I accept all value and honor for all things, however much it costs. I accept the value. I accept it in honor. So there's nothing that I say I can't buy or I can't afford. I am the fiduciary or trustee for the account name. A noble private lender. I am aware of United States obligations of all debts, public and private, according to 18 USC Code 8. There we go. So I'm aware of their code. 3, I'm aware that you are an agency of the United States Corporation as defined in 28 United States Code 3002-15 ABC. 4, I'm aware that all debts are prepaid as defined in 31 United States Code 5118D2 through the United States Department of Treasury, IMF, and the IRS. Number 5, all bills or debts for the year of blank are accepted for value and honor in 2 or 3 times the amount of blank. Please apply additional credit to this account so all future bills will show zero balance and cash. Total credit is blank. All payment coupons were mailed to your office as a 100% value coupon that is accepted for the value indicated. Number 7, the required forms 1099A, 1099B are reported to cover the process of this transaction for the funds that you have or will report. 8, the 1099A is required to properly account for the transfer of credit to your account. 1099B is required to report all secured cash and credit paid to your account. 9, 1099A is for acquisition, which means for the lender, buyer, purchaser, acquirer, and the borrower. Seller, supplier, provider. 1099B is for barter and exchange of cash, credit paid. So that's it. So that's your social. When you're dealing with the social, almost all the time, the A and the B are like synonymously moved together. If there are any questions or concerns, call technical support. So you call that number, you call our business number, and you do our email. If there is no money or debt owed, and you are not listed as recent authorized party to the name, Wallace Lewis Temple Jr. or Noble Private Lender or any derivative thereof, you are now hereby required to respond within 10 days from the date of the letter. Failure to reply if unauthorized or demand for payment was determined unauthorized will result in default amount of what? 10,000 USD. So that goes right back to that default affidavit I showed you that you're giving them, because now you're giving them 10 days. You gave them this cover letter. These are out of court claims. Each occurrence reply is required to settle or cure default. All replies are by postal mail or electronic mail communication in accordance to UCC 1-202, prepared and executed by my name, trustee, and I put the date there. So this is your correspondence that you go into. This is why it's the truth, because you're telling the truth of what your position is. I went into this truth affidavit guideline to show into the maxims of commercial law. And this is your affidavit for courts or dealing with no third parties. So some of the time you all are still dealing with third parties. This is what's causing you to get caught up in the trust realm. I'm sorry, getting you taken out of the trust realm and placed over into their United States codes, as we spoke of today. And you see that the United States trust law is far more different than the we say the codified codes right here. So we'll get into more details of this next week as we look into the bodies of wills, texts, trusts, and estates. And we'll see how the UTC, the Uniform Trust Code, is established throughout all layers of the system so that we're able to understand this body of law. Because as you see, the United States trust law is the body of law that regulates the legal instrument for holding wealth known as a what? A trust. Very important that we see this legal instrument is very powerful. Just even here, back in the day, somebody would have this will be a trust. Just this one document right here. This is a trust. So this will be utilized for the family. They will put it in, they would write it out in cursive, whatever way, and this document will be folded up. And by witness of this name of that person, if they wrote on a piece of paper, this is a trust. All right. So I'm giving you all some of the old time layers. Right now, we're more modern and modern advertised into ways, we can see. But we see that these are wills, trusts, and this is something that's been generally understood throughout time. So I'll close out from that and we'll get into more details next week of, I just mentioned, the United States trust law, as well as the trust code. So now I'll open up for any comments, questions, or shares. Anyone else that has things that listed in the chat, I'll read through those and then we'll be closing us out for today. All right, so let's look at our overview. We have our AI companion summary. So I'm going to start utilizing this more for us as we get through the chat. So let's go through and see if it gives us more knowledge on it. So this meeting discusses trust law versus United States codes, emphasizing that trusts are governed by state level uniform trust code rather than federal law. Temple explains the revocable living trust should operate outside corporate jurisdiction, with affidavits being crucial for establishing one's name as a business entity that can collect funds. He demonstrates how newspaper affidavits and fee schedules establish commercial value for one's name and recommends using sole proprietor accounts rather than trust accounts at banks to maintain privacy. Temple stresses the importance of university technicians' three core strategy courses: revocable trust, private banking, and power of attorney, for properly operating in commerce without relying on federal systems, and emphasizing collecting revenue as a fundamental purpose of trust. So that is correct. So our whole fundamental purpose of a trust that we teach is for you to learn how to run a business and collect funds. So we can't really say that you're able to get out of this understanding of funding, because funding the trust is one of the most core important parts of the entire operation. So as we know, we have our next week things for next week. It does give us that listed. All right, so it says next steps: Temple file form 1041 for trust tax reporting, update newspaper affidavit for name usage, create digital presence for trust business, establish fee schedule for name usage. So as you see, that affidavit I gave established a fee schedule along with attachments. That'll be an attachment. I will put my revocable living trust along with my newspaper affidavit behind my affidavit. Now, the question I was asked: what is required for a valid affidavit? Let's see how this question is answered for us. Okay, so that doesn't give us. Nope, there's no answer for that. All right, so that closes out that part for now. I'm gonna check out our YouTube to make sure we have questions on YouTube from there, and then I'll close us out for this week. Just make sure that we got everybody in, and we did. So we got everything finished out for this week. Thank you all for your time. Peace, and we'll be in touch next week. Thank you.